Could this be the most balanced Arizona Cardinals roster we've seen in a decade? National media being lazy again. And what spots do the Cardinals still need some talent? We'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _ Follow the podcast, Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man, so you can see my big dumb face spout stuff about the Cardinals every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, got a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. We could talk about the 12 draft picks that the Arizona Cardinals made until we're blue in the face. I don't want to do that today. I'll do it from a different angle. As you've noticed, my hairline hasn't receded much over the last 2 years. And you also haven't seen my once a year allergy fest like I went through 12 rounds with Mike Tyson. Maybe that's because I don't have this person co-hosting with me anymore. It's Bo Brack.
Look, Hair Club for Men is doing wonders for you. I thought the Locked On partnership between them and you, it's been a match made in heaven. I love it.
Yeah, well, you're wearing a hat for a reason today, so I feel like that's covering something. Bo Brack, of course, PHNX Cardinals, PHNX Sports. Him and Johnny Venner will do a great job over there at Bo Brack on Twitter. Bo, here's the thing: we haven't talked since the draft. I'll get your overall thoughts here just about the 12 picks, namely, the top 9 or 10, and what that'll mean for the infusion of talent for this team that desperately needs it. But let's start with sticking and drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., sticking and drafting at 27. Was it slow and steady and simple and boring wins the race here?
I mean, that would be the case if it wasn't, especially at the 4th overall selection, not a generational type talent. Like what Marvin Harrison does and what need he fills, the X wide receiver position, it was the best option, that this offseason could provide. And the Arizona Cardinals were, luckily in that position, I guess, at 4th overall, and the way that the quarterback dominoes fell in the draft. But to be able to get a 6'4" playmaker with the pedigree that he has, the work ethic, I mean, he did all the homework for everybody. Like, you didn't have to do a deep dive on Marvin Harrison Jr. to figure out if he was going to be a guy, what's his bustability. Like, he's a guy that's not just NFL ready, he's star ready. And for him to be able to get into this offense that wants to ground and pound and create a conflict at the line of scrimmage, and then you pair him with the skill set of Kyler Murray, his arm talent, it's dangerous. I mean, we're talking about like AJ Green on steroids from a couple of years ago. Remember those deep go balls? But you got a guy who's 22 instead of 32. And I think that it's just going to be a tremendous matchup for this offense. And they really do have a big time player. And then you look at Darius Robinson, and what was their other biggest need? The pass rush. And I know it doesn't look in the form of a traditional outside linebacker edge rusher, but it's a versatile piece that plays with violence, that's adaptable, that's a guy that matches the culture. And I think he's a guy that immediately upgrades the defensive line. Brian Baldinger, we're talking to him, he said he reminds him of DeForest Buckner. If you're getting those kinds of comps, I mean, that's I know that's setting the bar high for the kid, but I mean, you add a player that compares to that, to your defensive line that was the worst group last season and probably in the last 10 years, it's an immediate upgrade.
Yeah, and it's interesting, people say that Darius Robinson was a reach. He wasn't going to be there at 35, so you got to draft your guy that you want before you go up. And I don't even necessarily think it's because here's the thing. Monti Ossenfort, and I had Dame Parson from Locked On NFL Draft on earlier this week, and we made this comp Howie Roseman is the mock draft expert's favorite GM because he always takes the names that everybody thinks are going to pop. Monti Ossenfort is the antithesis of that. Who's Max Melton? Where did he go to school? Who's Darius? Missouri. What are we doing here? We've taken, Johnny Newton there at 27. And he does more homework. He's a nerd. He's got a massive scouting background with incredible accolades in the ring department. So did Jonathan Gannon. And this was the guy that they picked. Now, with this, I ask you this. And, we go down, I'll pull up the I'll pull up all of the draft picks here. I'm going to do this from time to time just so everybody can see. Like, the biggest needs the Cardinals had were wide receiver, pass rusher, corner, running back, interior to offensive line help, and probably a safety because Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson aren't getting any younger. They nailed all of it. So I ask you, Bo, when you and I did this for a couple years together on Locked On Cardinals, we always griped at the fact that they were so top heavy with talent. It was always top. It was Patrick Peterson. It was Larry Fitzgerald. It was Budda Baker. It was one offensive lineman. And it was, David Johnson for 18 months. But then that was it. Do you see potentially this being the most balanced roster we've seen in a decade plus for the Cardinals if 70% of their draft and your players pan out?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. Like, I think since the exit of Bruce Arians, who probably was the key talent evaluator there, and he would do it through relationships he had throughout the league, and they were able to hit on some veterans, like they kick the tires on, and we would deem it a Keim special. Well, in hindsight, it's like, yeah, it probably wasn't Steve Keim that was making those decisions, right? But then Monti Ossenfort, as he said, like, he's a guy that's able to take the tape and marry it to the coaching staff and its scheme, right? And how Max Melton's going to fit in, where other teams are like, oh my God, look at where, the consensus is on Cooper DeJean or Kool-Aid McKistry, like people in our chat, and they're well informed, like the people that listen and view your show more so than the host of it. Like they are able to identify, like, if Max Melton's name was Kool-Aid Melton, he probably would be a higher drafted prospect. But he fits exactly what Gannon and Rollis want to do defensively. Like, he's their version of Richard Sherman. Like, he's going to be their zone coverage king with the long arms, the athleticism, exactly what they're looking for there. So, but then you look at it, it's like, I have a big gripe with them taking Tip Ryman, 82nd overall, top 100 pick, a guy that's ceiling is tight end 2, but it's probably tight end 3 coming into this year. I'm like, I thought that they were going to utilize these top 100 picks to get starters. But, like, to your point, like, they're starting to fill out this roster and add depth, add backups that are going to be high volume snap guys. Like, we're going to look at the snap counts for each and every game, and, like, Tip Raymond's going to play 35 to 40% of the snaps. That's a lot of PT for a backup player. So, like, you've got Trey McBride, and that was my biggest problem with the selection, the value of the pick. But overall, it's like, okay, you got Tip, your tight end room, it's deeper than it's ever been. You got Elijah Jones with Max Melton and the addition of Sean Murphy-Bunting, you're deep there. The offensive line, we talked about the left guard spot. Like, we don't know who's going to start there, but you've got options and you've got backups, and then Christian Jones in the 5th round. Like, he's done a really good job in filling out this roster that was completely just barren of talent across the board at this time last year.
Yeah, it's wild. And the Tip Raymond pick was actually interesting. There's 2 different ways to look at it. One, for me, and I said this during the offseason, I thought maybe they'd take a flyer, like a 1-year Austin Hooper deal or some veteran tight end who, if Trey McBride gets hurt, they don't have, and I know that Huggy Bear is a fan favorite and he's shown flashes, but having a proven entity, like, I thought that maybe that's the way they would go. And then with the draft pick, it's kind of like draft day where he said David Bleepin Putney because he felt like it. He had so many picks that it's like, you know what? Maybe you do that in case something were to happen. He's one of the best blocking tight ends in football. You can run big packages and run play action out of it and have 2 big targets on the outside with him and Trey McBride. So, like, I think Monty's checking all the boxes. And I'll tell you what, because you're right. This is good. This is a run-first team with wild talent on the outside and at the tight end position. So good luck stacking the box against James Conner and Trey Benson. When you're running one-on-one matchups on the outside, you got Trey McBride against the backer or safety. There's going to be issues, like, immediately here with this team, right? I mean, that's not overstating something. That's not too future pacing. We're looking at that in 2024.
Has Kyler Murray before this past season ever had a look where he looked across the line of scrimmage and it was a stacked box? And then he's been able to, like, because all Cliff did was spread them out. And opposing defenses were like, you're not going to run the ball. Like, and that's why they had, some fraudulent, like, really good run games. And people are like, I didn't know Cliff's teams could run this game. It's like they never ran against the stacked box. And now they're going to set that up, and they're going to truly establish the run. Like, think Pittsburgh game. Like, James Conner earlier in that game, he was averaging like under 2 yards per carry, but they kept pounding the rock because they knew that once they wore him down, they were going to be able to open that up. And then once that opened up, it opened up play action for Kyler Murray, who emerges at the end of the half, Trey McBride, and you've got shots downfield. It's really like they don't do anything. Like, they're not cracking Adams as far as their offensive scheme. It's simple, but they're going to do it at a very high level because it's going to be well coached, and they've got the personnel now.
I just wonder if they're going to speed up play any more than they did last year because they have the talent to do it now. It's just a fascinating wrinkle. It doesn't look like it's Drew Petzing's, MO, but you can do it if you need to. And it's just fascinating to have options. That's what the Cardinals have now, is options, which is
the only thing I would the only thing I would say is, like, maybe it depends on where they feel like they are defensively. Like, I think that they might have to continue to take some of the air out of the football.
Sure.
For sure. Because of where their limitations are on defense.
Yeah, we're not looking at 39-second 3-and-outs like we were a couple years ago. I mean, it's more, but like all of Drew Petzing's drives can be 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, even if it ends in a punt or a field goal. It's just, it doesn't always need to be that when you have all of these options. It doesn't have to swing all over the other. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals, Brack, PHNX Cardinals, joining me here. He forced me to do this. Just want to let you know. National Knock. What does that mean? I'll discuss it next. That's called the tease, ladies and gentlemen. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more, okay? Every moment. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Like, here's the thing. Who do you think is going to win the NBA championship? Denver? Is Boston for real? Are the Knicks for real? Is OKC or Minnesota going to finally take the reins from all the old dogs in the league and get a win, get a championship ring? It'd be unbelievable. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked on Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Brack joining me, PHNX Cardinals. Him and Johnny do a great job over there. You look terrible in red. I just got to let you know with that. They had their draft show was awesome. I had players, Michael Wilson, etc. They wore these god-awful wedding singer jackets, but it was in synchronicity, so I can appreciate that.
It looked like hacky magician.
Hacky magician without a top hat. Yeah, that's great. I mean, Bo went viral in their Discord. I saw, check them out. They do a great job over there. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen, though, obviously. So, Bo, we're used to this, okay? This has kind of been since 2017. It's been the Cardinals are always the team that could sneak it, teams that may surprise you, teams that are a year away. They talk in these platitudes that are future, that are down the road. These are teams to watch out for. That's what this season was. 2019, a dark horse rookie of the year, or a team that could make some noise with a rookie, and that was Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray won rookie of the year. 2020, teams that are on the fringe, and that's always what it's been because national media has been lazy and indifferent to the Cardinals, and rightfully so. I mean, for the majority of it, rightfully so. And now it's going the other way where it's like, okay, the Cardinals now have a young, talented roster that could really make some noise, yet all of the rankings have them below 25th, and they're blaming it all on the NFC West. Since when did Geno Smith, Matthews, like, what's changed where it's like the Cardinals are that far behind everybody? I don't really understand that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, I think even with one of the worst rosters in the league last year, they were in position to sweep the Seattle Seahawks. And I know that like some
games
people
last year.
Yeah, I know, and they go 3-5 with Kyler Murray in his return. Should have been 4-4, but Matt Prater he does us a solid and misses 2 kicks. Yes, where's his statue? I mean, they could go 4-4 with one of the least talented rosters, and they raised the talent level significantly this off season. I just don't know. And then like Seattle, like Geno Smith has had this career renaissance, which is great, good for Geno, right? But Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator that was working hand in hand with them, is now in Chicago. We don't know anything about the play calling up in Seattle. They've got a brand new head coach. All signs to me are pointing to Seattle falling off and the Arizona Cardinals having an ability to hurdle them, but nobody's bold enough to do that. Like, that's the NFL national groupthink where they just aren't bold enough. And it happens every year. There's always teams that emerge because they get bigger, younger, stronger, faster in the draft process because of where they are. And sometimes you fall into a good pick, and then you got good talent evaluators like Monty, and then quarterback play. Like the teams that I have ahead of the Arizona Cardinals, it's criminal because they have so many question marks at the quarterback position, from the Saints to the Steelers to the team I just mentioned in Seattle. It's just like, really, you're going to rank those guys ahead of the Arizona Cardinals? Maybe if you have injury concerns about Kyler because he hasn't played a full season in a long time. But when they have Kyler Murray, they're a near 500 team. That, to me, puts them at least at the fringe of the top 20 and not below, not just ahead of the bottom feeders of the NFL, because that's where they have them right now.
Yeah, and it's be like, oh man, the Cardinals are 6-3. What is? Nobody saw this coming. You weren't looking close enough, and I think that you and I have never been homers. It's never been. It's always rosy. It's always rosy, and I think it's going to benefit us now because we're looking at it. You know what people you say people are too close to it. They can't see it. Being too close to it for so long, you're seeing the difference. You're seeing everything that isn't what it was. You're seeing the biggest thing with the Cardinals that has always been kind of, the knock, but it's just kind of been, I don't know, tangential from what people talk about is they've never really hit people. Like they've never had a defense the last 5 or 7 years where it's like, that is a fierce defense with corners that like to tackle instead of push people out of bounds with there's so many more Budda Bakers and Jalen Thompsons on this team now than there were when it was just Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson who hit people hard. Kazir White, Mac Wilson, you've got guys that are really going to punish people on the defensive side of the ball, which I think will benefit the offense where they won't have to carry the weight like they did last year. And I think it's going to happen a lot quicker than people think.
It always does. It always does. It's like it happens every year in the NFL, right? And guys aren't bold enough to make the decision because they don't want to take the flack, especially when they're dealing with maybe bigger fan bases that are going to push back and say, how dare you? How dare you say that the New Orleans Saints are going to be down the power rankings behind a 4-win Arizona Cardinals team because all people are doing are cherry picking the standing. That's it. And they're not looking at the full case study at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's like preseason rankings for college basketball and football. They don't mean anything. Everything's different from last year. Doesn't make any sense. Now, do you see the Cardinals, so say barring any sort of, catastrophic injuries or anything like that, which you never hope for, do you see the Cardinals as being ready to rock? Or do you think that there still needs to be a couple additions here? And they've got under $20 million of effective cap space to play around with. They've got more money than anybody. They've got top 5 money probably next year and all their picks. Is this a set and forget, let's roll? Or do you think they still need to add a couple pieces?
They're not going to add any. The only room I think they could add a significant piece is to the pass rush room, and I think that they're. And I talked to Nick Rollis the other day in the press conference, and he views that as a deep room. He likes the rotation, but I think they're still going to run into the problem is do they have a guy that's going to really make some noise and really kind of get after the quarterback as much as they need to? They did a good job in the first 10 games last year, but not down the stretch. The final 7 games were brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only spot. Otherwise, where are you adding? The defensive line, I know you could always use defensive linemen just like you could use offensive linemen pitching in baseball. But right now, as it stands, Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones, Dante Stills, Darius Robinson, LJ Collier. That's 5, and they like to have a 5-guy rotation. So it seems like if you're going to add somebody, you got to take somebody out. Where the pass rush room, it's you could remove a Jesse Luketa from that, and people are okay, I liked him, but if it's an upgrade, it's an upgrade. So other than that, what other position group would you add to? I mean, the guard position's been flooded. Unless there's a significant upgrade that becomes available, I don't see them going out and aggressively pursuing anybody.
We'll talk about that next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to take a pause here. We got Wayne and Garth playing hockey in the middle of the street to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know you're saying flag on the play. You've already talked about that. I'm going to talk about it every damn day. There's so much good stuff in this game. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments, where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover on Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on! Final segment, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Please go to YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Turn notifications on. It's only going to get better from here. Everybody, fans, media members, everybody deserves this. And hopefully this will, just be this, the tip of the iceberg for prosperity and relevancy in the desert. Brack, PHNX Cardinals, joins me today. Yeah, I kind of regret it, but it's fine. I mean, it's good. It's something that I feel like it's chicken soup for the soul once in a while to remember why I'm happy that I'm doing this by myself. Dear friend joins me today. So you said, what other spots and I know that this is kind of, counterintuitive thinking, but the wide receiver room is something to broach the conversation because they made the decision to take a wide receiver with the number 4 overall pick. So that decision was made in an effort to make the wide receiver room the biggest, if not one of the top biggest strengths on this roster. You look at the rest of the wide receivers, okay? You got Michael Wilson, who showed flashes last year, has had injuries his entire career. Greg Dortch has never really had any sort of expectations pinned on him. He's been, a fill-in guy when Rondell Moore would get hurt, and to his credit, he's produced every time he's been given opportunity, but he's never had expectations against him. And then you have Chris Moore and Zach Pascal, who were like the deep veteran guys who've had 3,700 receiving yards combined in 13 seasons. None of them have had over 600 yards receiving. None of them have had over 55 receptions in one season. And Tyler Boyd was obviously the one that I was interested in, and then I think he's tied like to see at this point. But there's guys like Zay Jones, guys out there who've had more of an impact in the position that could just bolster this and have it truly be a set and forget if there's an injury or something like that. I mean, do you see any sort of need for that, or do you think I'm insane for thinking that?
Yeah, I just don't agree with it. But this is something that you and I have disagreed on since we started working together back in like 2018, right? That's when we did it, 2018, 2017. Yeah. And I remember being in the Fox Sports 910 producer room, and you're pounding the table like, hey, somebody needs to go sign Eric Decker or Demaryius Thomas or guys at that time that were late in their careers. And I was staunchly against it because I feel like it's a young man's game. And when I see like Zay Flowers, a journeyman wide receiver, or we'll say the guy who just signed on Friday in Shark, who just signed DJ Shark, and guys that have been around the block, right? They serve a purpose, but I think they serve a purpose if you have snaps for them, where I don't see as it stands right now, the Arizona Cardinals have snaps for those guys to play. What role would those guys play? I think everybody has a specific role for this Arizona Cardinals wide receiver core. It's well defined, and there's not if you needed to bring somebody in to teach Marvin Harrison Jr. how to be a pro and how to find his process, he doesn't need that. His dad did that. He's been a pro, since high school for the most part. He knows what he's doing. Michael Wilson's the Stanford guy. We've talked to him several times. There's no questions as far as his preparation, how he's going to prepare. And then Greg Dortch has been in this league for a long time, and he's been able to see how guys prepare and stuff like that. And he's been chomping at the bit for this opportunity. He's not going to let that, relinquish that. And then Zach Pascal, people are saying, well, let's upgrade Zach Pascal with Zay Jones or somebody else who's probably a better fit for the passing game, where Zach Pascal's role is to be your best run blocking wide receiver, and he plays special teams. Is Zay Jones or one of these other wide receivers going to come in and embrace teams like Zach Pascal, who's also beloved in the locker room? I just think that to get incrementally better in the passing attack and then to just say like, hey, thanks for your service, Zach, and then send them. Like, I think that's more detrimental. So I just don't see like a vet wide receiver like really making any improvement, and they want to lean into the young guys kind of taking their lumps and learning on the fly because they believe like the best way to learn is through failure to an extent. And I just think that they're willing to kind of ride with that early on, as long as if you're making the same mistakes multiple times, then you got an issue.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think that I go back and forth the conundrum where this could be good a lot quicker, but what does that good look like? Is that win-loss? Is that points per game? Is that holding other teams' points per game and not really looking at win-loss in 2024? Because what we know about the majority of these young players is not a whole lot yet. Like Paris Johnson Jr., we know because he played every snap last year. Michael Wilson was hurt the majority of the season. Like there are guys, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is a rookie. Like all of these young guys who are going to play, it looks great on paper. They look to be set up for the future better than maybe ever. And I don't say that as a platitude. Like this has been a terrible organization for a long time. And if they can find, their star in Marvin Harrison Jr. and 60% of those other guys work out, they've got a full slate of picks next year. They've got a whole bunch of money. They got Trey Benson, the heir apparent running back. I just don't know what they'll be good this year looks like if you're trusting a bunch of young players who've never really had this action before. BJ Ojulari is another one who showed flashes last year, but we don't know anything yet. There's the runway, but we don't know anything. And I think that's what scares me the most about, like, how are they going to do this year? You're going to start the season, it's going to be like, oh, nobody, let's look till next year. Like, I don't know. Like, that's where I go back and forth with this roster.
Yeah. I mean, I think as far as the roster goes and the players in that locker room, they have found a specific type of player. It's not the previous regime where they're just like, hey, we expect you guys to be pros, and they weren't, right? And they just kind of let them kind of run everything, and they were too player friendly, where I think that there's expectations. They want self-starter guys that are going to do some self-scouting. But as far as like the primary like teaching you like aspect, the coaches take on all that responsibility. Like if a guy is floundering, if he's not improving, like they're going to take that on themselves. They're not like, hey, we need to go bring in another player to help us with that. Like, so like before, like you had Cliff Kingsbury where you absolutely needed it, right? Because the coaches were incapable of it, where there's a ton of confidence that the coaching staff's like, hey, this is a crazy idea. The coaches are going to coach the players and teach them how to be pros. Like, that's crazy. It's not. I mean, that's the environment. That's the culture.
Yeah, that's wild. I do remember Cliff Kingsbury. I have one more question for you before we get out of here. Remember Cliff Kingsbury when they signed J.J. Watt? It's like, that's somebody that you want to. Like he was coming in like he was playing for J.J. Watt, which was like one of the wildest things. Now, last thing, and I know that this is something we all want to relieve ourselves from, is talking about Steve Keim and talking about Cliff Kingsbury. But it's in part, this is why we're here, witnessing this. So it's still part of the story. It's not a narrative. It's not Uncle Ricoing it, looking at back 10 years that didn't matter. Like, my question to you is, regardless of what happens with Zaven Collins after 2024, with the Cardinals declining his fifth-year option, are we starting to see the end of the relevancy of talking about Steve Keim? Like, is this it?
I mean, I think every draft season you'll remember not fondly. Like you'll have PTSD of Steve Keim taking an off-ball linebacker in consecutive first rounds. So like when people ask who hurt you, you know who it is. It's him, right? But as far, I think this team, and it's the most gigantic, glaring indictment on a former general manager that you've ever seen, is within like almost a calendar year and some change, has completely like wiped his imprint off of it. It's unreal. And that's not, I think that Zaven Collins is one of the few draft picks that has really endeared himself to the new culture, to the new organization. Like JG loves Zaven Collins. Nick Rollis loves Zaven Collins because there's buy-in and there's a willingness to do whatever it takes to help the team. But as far as like, the reality is he's a guy playing a new position. He's in the second year and he was misutilized, and it's not his fault for his entire pro career before that. So he's got a long way to go, but the organization's willing to work with him. Where you look at guys who exited last year before the season, they did not have that same willingness. So it's like there are a few guys that have bought in the culture, and you can see who they are. And Zabin's one of those guys.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, what if this is the reclamation project for Hassan Reddick, and you keep him, and he gets good, and you keep him in house? That would be the final unraveling of everything Stevie Baby did or didn't do during his way too long tenure here as Arizona Cardinals GM. Brack PHNX Cardinals. I'm Alex Clancy. You see me every day. Bo, tell them where they can find you everywhere.
Yeah, you can follow me, of course, at Brack on Twitter, and you can find the show daily on PHNX Sports on YouTube and wherever you find podcasts.
Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow or Monday. Monday.